Welcome to the tavern. Let's make a drink. Today we're making a recipe from 1749 for a cordial orange water, and I'm really excited to try it because it kind of reminds me of a modern cocktail. As I've said in some of these videos before, cocktails in the 18th century weren't really a thing. Instead, they were making these large concoctions that they would either serve at parties, bottle, or barrel for later. So you really don't see those small scale things at the time. But when I started reading this recipe, it reminded me of a modern old-fashioned. Or maybe it'll turn out somewhat like a Grand Marnier. Anyway, here's the recipe. Take 3 quarts of good brandy and the rinds of 1.5 dozen oranges. Par them very thin, that none of the whites go in. Let them steep in brandy 3 days and 3 nights close stopped. Then take 5 pints of fair water and 1.5 pounds of double refined sugar. Boil this syrup half an hour, and as the scum rises, then strain it through a jelly bag and let it stay until cold. Then mix it with the brandy, which must first be poured from the peels and settled. Keep it until use. So there's really 4 main ingredients in this. You have your brandy, you have your orange peels, you have your sugar, and you have your water. Now, if you were paying attention, you'll notice that one of the first ingredients is you're making a weak simple syrup. If you do the math, you figure out how much is going to evaporate off during that boil, you'll find that there's about 2 parts water to 1 part sugar. So I made a weak simple syrup at home. I used 2 cups of water, 1 cup of sugar, and just kind of put that in there. The next ingredient you have is your liquor that you've infused with orange peels for 3 days. Now, if you don't want to take 3 quarts of good brandy, instead you can take 1 cup of brandy, and then you can infuse it instead of using the rinds of 1.5 dozen oranges. You can just use 1.5. That is the exact same ratio to take it down. Now, I've done an interesting experiment on this one. I've done a cup of brandy that I've used a peel and a half in there to infuse it, but I've also taken some rye whiskey and I've done the exact same thing. One point of note is that as I'm going through these recipe books, these are coming from Europe. They're not coming from the Americas. So you're not seeing whiskey in there. You're seeing brandy, you're seeing rum, but whiskey was pretty much primarily a provincial thing that's being drank in the North American colonies. So me thinking that, okay, maybe this is a little bit like an old-fashioned, let's Americanize it a little bit and we'll use some whiskey and we'll see how it tastes. Now, to take this down to a more manageable size, it's a 3-to-2 ratio of your alcohol to your weak simple syrup. So you're going to use 2 ounces of your whiskey or your cognac or your brandy, and then you're going to use 1 1/3 ounce of your weak simple syrup. If you're feeling adventurous though, you could use 3 ounces of the whiskey or the brandy and 2 ounces of the simple syrup. We're going to do this kind of dirty today. We're not going to put this in a separate mixing vessel, but I've just got 2 rocks glasses here. I'm going to put a big ice cube in them. And then I'm going to add my 2 ounces of whiskey to this one, pre-measured. And I'm going to add my 2 ounces of Brandy infused over here. And I'm kind of curious about this one because, you know, the ingredients of an old-fashioned are simple syrup, whiskey, and then you're going to add usually some bitters. So I'm curious about this one because there's no bitters in it, but I'm interested if the peel, having been infused in the liquor for 3 days, is kind of going to play the part of those bitters and give it that, you know, slightly seasoned taste that you get with an old-fashioned. All right, so let's be dirty with it and just stir it up in here. Don't need to be fancy and transfer for this one. But we had a little bit of a toddler-based technical error there. One of my kids stopped the recording midway, but you didn't miss much, just me stirring these up. So anyway, let's do the taste test. So we've got the brandy-based one here, and we've got the whiskey-based one here. So I'm curious as to how these are going to taste. Let's do the brandy one first, since that's what the recipe calls for. Already you can smell the orange. It's definitely prevalent on the nose. That's good. It definitely has that orange taste. It's definitely, you know, got that flavor to it. It's sweet. You don't really taste the burniness of the brandy or anything like that. Kind of tastes a little like a Grand Marnier, honestly. Let's taste the whiskey version. Again, you can get the orange, you can get the smell of it. It honestly kind of smells like an old-fashioned. It's a little lighter in color than I would like, but let's see how it tastes. I gotta say, it's a little sweeter than I usually like an old-fashioned, but you definitely get a lot of the flavors from it. You have that like very distinctive old-fashioned flavor. Honestly, makes me wonder if someone was trying this, they kind of got the first one by accident. As I said, it's a little sweeter than I would like, but yeah, it's pretty close. I like the whiskey one better, but hey, try it for yourself. Let me know which one you like. I'm gonna hang on to this. Cheers.